All right, welcome to episode 20 of the Bulls REKAP Podcast. I'm Joe Cowley of the Chicago Sun-Times. You can read me in the Sun-Times sports section. If you see me anywhere else, it's probably a mistake. Or you could follow me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at @JCowleyHoops. It's not always a fun follow, but, enter at your own risk. Excited to have this guy come on. It's been weeks and months of negotiations and talking. No, it isn't. Look, I've been doing this now. This 12 years with the White Sox, 11 or 12 years. This is now year 13 with the Bulls. If people ask me about Casey Johnson, if I have to describe Casey Johnson in one word, besides loving him like a brother, professional is the one word that comes up to mind. I don't think I've ever been around a beat writer, because to me, he's still a beat writer, that just crosses the T's and dots the I's at every corner and just does everything the right way, from the way he dresses, the professionalism in which he does that, just the way he approaches the beat, the grind, how hard he works a beat. And I respect the hell out of him. I did before going on the Bulls beat. Once I joined the Bulls beat, obviously I was like, okay, I got to compete against the beast. So now he is no longer a Tribune writer. He has long thrown those clothes aside. CHSN Bulls insider Casey Johnson joining the pod this week.
I'm still not doing your stupid interrogation room, Joe.
We've got great these interrogation room questions are so red hot. You have no choice. You can pass on
whichever ones I want to decline. I'm declining whichever ones I want to decline.
That's fine.
You know that was the prerequisite for the
I got you.
But thanks for the kind words. You know what stood out to me about that was how wild it is that you've done the Bulls now more than you've done baseball. Because I still. Yeah. That's insane, because I mean, in some regards, although obviously I feel the same brotherhood with you, that, and I'm gonna do my little compliment thing later, even though like you've been on the Bulls forever, I still kind of think of you as a baseball writer, which is kind of wild, you know.
No, and it's funny, like when I see Sully come out, or even when we go to Oakland and we see some of or Golden State, we see some of the old Oakland writers or Associated Press people, and they're like, oh, look at all the old baseball writers on the beat. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I am. So look, before we even get into what I want to get into with you, the best moment of the year is not the Giddy shot. It is the end of the interview with you and Kobe White, where he goes to do a handshake and you just do a fist bump. Now, people don't know you. You're not a big fan of germs. Before COVID even hit, you were not a fan. I don't think you and I have ever shaken hands.
Correct.
We've pumped and fisted and pumped and done all that. But as far as a handshake, I don't think I rarely see you ever do that. So when Kobe reaches for it, what was the off camera, I guarantee Kobe could not have let that go.
All right. Well, several things. Okay. First of all, you're going to get the cool backstory. I mean, first of all, what is so funny about that is, like, before the interview started, Kobe and I are sitting there chatting while the cameras are getting set up. And we were talking about the time I did a walk-off interview with him, and he was sick as hell. And I was like, Kobe, if I had known you were sick, I wouldn't have requested you for two reasons. Right. Number one, out of respect to you. And number two, because I'm a germaphobe. And he goes, I'm a germaphobe too. So, like, we had already established that we were both germaphobes. And then he goes in to do the handshake. And I'm like, no, that's not happening. And if you see in the video, and our digital team did an amazing job with the promo and having fun with it. Right. Kobe's reaction was priceless. But if you've seen the video, I just never waver. I just hold the fist out. And Kobe's just like, and the best part is they kept this part in. He goes, he busted out laughing. He goes, you guys can't keep that in. You got to edit that out. They kept that in. But then when the camera shut off, he just looked at me and goes, bro, why are you so weird?
And then you got some collateral damage at home too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, come on, that's like every day for both of us. I mean, we both.
I know exactly.
That's. I mean, all we do is get ridiculed by our children. This is one thing that Joe and I share in common and talk about often on the road, is how we're the underappreciated and overlooked CEO of the family, and all we do is catch the strays.
So you, let's go back now. If there's two people, like when I was at the Sun-Times doing the White Sox beat, and then I make the switch over, I'd probably say even up till 7-8 years ago, if you would have told me two people I never thought would have left the Tribune, it would have been you and Sully. Because when I look at you guys and talk to you guys and know you guys like I do, I just think of, at the end of the day, just pure newspaper guys to the bone. And I think that's why I think the TV thing has worked so well for you, because you're not TV guy. You're not taking makeup. You're not doing a TV voice. You're a newspaper guy asking really good questions, knowing when to ask them, who to request, who you want, and just being you and being real. But how tough of that decision went into, I'm going to leave the newspaper business, the thing I love, because you and I have talked about how much we do love the grind of being writers, and to make that jump. How tough was that? And do you still look back at it and go, I still got that itch. I still got that, I miss writing a notebook. I miss writing on deadline.
No. So, I mean, first of all, obviously Sully's still there, and you're dead right. I never, ever thought I would leave newspapers. And as you've heard me say this many times, I'm a newspaper guy on TV, right? That's the way I look at it. But no, I will say this, and I've talked about this a couple of times elsewhere, but like leaving the Tribune was incredibly emotional for me. Like it was a process where I had to move through all my own personal emotions, because that's the only place I ever wanted to work.
Right.
Dating back to high school, I told people that I wanted to be the Bulls beat writer for the Chicago Tribune. I mean, how either boring or awesome is that? I mean, I did exactly what I wanted to do. And I love the Chicago Tribune with all my heart. I love newspapers with all my heart. I never thought I would leave newspapers, to your point. You've heard me say this before. Like, I mean, and I'm not throwing dirt on the Tribune, because there's so many great talented people there and so many great colleagues, but a big frustration for me, and I voiced this to my editor at the time when I was telling her that I was leaving. Our deadlines got so prohibitive that we no longer really got night results in the next day's newspaper, unlike what the Sun-Times is able to do. And I just felt like I really wasn't working for a newspaper anymore. That was one part of it. Another big part of it that I actually have not talked much about is, like, I was kind of worn out, because this sounds dramatic because we're not, as you know, curing cancer here, but like I felt like a huge responsibility. You brought me in with those crossing T's, dotting I's, to like get everything right and be like the Tribune's eyes and ears and historian on the Bulls for all time. And I poured my heart and soul into that. And I think one of my best qualities is diligence. Like I try to be like really, really diligent. And it just kind of wore me out after a while.
Yeah.
And I felt like the last couple of years of the Tribune, I was not living up to my own personal standards. My bosses were like, you're doing a great job, but I just didn't feel the same. So you combine that with our earlier deadlines, and then NBC Sports Chicago just came along with this unbelievable opportunity. And without boring listeners too much or talking much longer, I'll just say, because you obviously work with Ryan McGuffey on this podcast, and you're part of Cap's channel. They both know, like, NBC Sports Chicago was a special place to work. I knew it from the outside because I had been on the Tribune show when it was there. But when I got in on the inside, I had no idea how much those 5 years were going to rejuvenate my career. The energy there, the intelligence there was off the charts. It was such a great place to work. And I'm really thankful and lucky that I took that leap to do what I did there.
So last year, obviously, the big news was they are no longer going to do it. And I mean, there's a couple of weeks where there's just a vortex of emptiness because no one knows what's going to happen. Then obviously CHSN comes to fruition. Was there a kind of, oh shit, did I make the right decision? Because you didn't know your future if it was going to be CHSN. I mean, you didn't know what was going to happen. Your contract was up, and that was that. Was there concern that maybe this wasn't the right decision, or maybe I got to start thinking about something else completely out of the profession?
Well, we both know how this business is. It's hard to stay in it, and we're both fortunate to have been doing it for as long as we have. This quote was in the Tribune story when I got hired. Everyone kept telling me I was going to be okay, but until I was okay, I wasn't okay. So right. I felt like everyone knew my body of work and knew where I was, and I was hopeful. But yeah, they were a startup, so there was radio silence for a while, and I wouldn't say I was nervous, but I was, I was like, I need a job, So, and then it went from 0 to 100, and the new place has different rhythms and nuances, but it's been a fantastic place to work as well. And I think we'll just only get better as we, move this out and build this out.
The thing I always appreciated about you, and look, I think our friendship, I don't know if we could have had the same friendship if I would have been moved to the Bulls even 3 years earlier, 2 years earlier, because my headspace back when I did the White Sox was kill at all costs. And the climate in Chicago at the time was, it is Tribune versus Sun-Times. It is no friends on that side. You could be friendly with them, but no friends on that side. It was, Mariotti versus, whoever, whatever grudge he had, which was probably the whole world. And, then we took Morrissey and you guys took Biggs. And it was fun as hell, but it was the Wild West back then. And I always say, like, people say, well, because at appearance, the best summary, you and I, we arrive at the Indiana game. You look like an English professor. I look like an adjunct,
a homeless person,
an adjunct phys ed teacher who lost his job, and no one's quite sure why. Could have been something really bad. We're not sure, but human resources was involved. And I remember Billy just looking at us and going, "Yeah, that's about right. He was not surprised at all." So my point is, you and I, the coming together, the timing of it, I think was perfect because we were both in a place where we were the fight was no longer Sun-Times versus Tribune. I mean, we still competed, I think, at a really high level, but the fight almost became what you mentioned. How do we stay in this business where all of a sudden we feel like dinosaurs that's slipping away? And there was a kinship, I think, built because of that.
Yeah, a brotherhood of wanting to stay in print journalism for sure. Although I think people need to hear this. Like, people don't understand, like, and I hated the Sun-Times when I was at the Tribune.
Right.
Like, I don't think people understand how much, like, that newspaper war existed, because we're talking obviously many, many years ago. Yes. I didn't hate people at the Sun-Times, but I hated the Sun-Times, and I hated the approach of the Sun-Times. I was like, that's wrong. That's not how you cover a story. Not every time, but so
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I think people need to understand, like, that was a real thing. Now, that said, I mean, Brian Hanley, Roman Madrowski, and you are three of my favorite competitors I've ever gone against. Brad Biggs for 1 year too, but then we hired him, and that was the one bad year I did football, but we won't go into that. But no, so I mean, great people sometimes, but yeah, people need to understand that. And I agree with you. If we had first met early in our career, we would not be doing this podcast.
No, it would have been. I mean, Teddy Greenstein and I eventually amended things, but I was at war with him for a couple of years, and then I was at war with. There's still, I think it's pretty public that I have no admiration at all for Dave Haw, and that goes back to the Tribune thing when I had a column for 2 years, and that got personal. And it was. And I always used to say the Tribune operator, especially you. I always thought you, but even like Mark Gonzalez, who I competed against, and Sully for a couple of years. I remember one time Sully and I, we were like in each other's face, and he stuck his middle finger out at me. I grabbed his middle finger and bent it back. And to this day, he's like, "You broke my finger. You broke my finger."
I talked to Sully on the drive home from the game last night. He just retold me that story.
Yeah.
Because I told him I was going on the podcast. He's like, "Don't let him break your finger."
He even said to me, I go, "You put that middle finger in my face again, I'm going to freaking break it." And that little stubby finger came out, and I freaking grabbed it. I mean, it was, and the other thing too, at the same time, the Sun-Times, we had a civil war going on where it was us against Jay Mariotti and Couch, and then it would spill over into like the Tribune. And it was crazy. I miss those days, and I don't miss those days. And I always used to say, people used to say, well, when you're early on, especially when I was competing against you, I'm like, look, there's just some things I just can't beat him at. I go, I have to do what I do best, which was my mentality was always, I have to be Slippin' Jimmy from Better Call Saul, a show I know you didn't watch. And I'm the guy that's going through dumpsters, and I'm the guy that's in the back alley, and guys are coming up to me with whispers. And you operate that way too, but just it always felt different. It felt like you brought up the point of historian and telling the story, and I always thought you did it in an unbelievably fine line way where you were honest and truthful with people, but you weren't afraid to be critical, and they respected you enough not to have hard feelings. Why? Yeah, I'm getting in shouting matches with guys and have to be separated from Orlando Cabrera. It just was two different approaches, but I think both effective.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, like your first couple of years in the Bulls beat, we had a couple, trip ups over some stories. I mean, there was times I thought you covered things I didn't like. I mean, especially like, there was that whole thing the year the Derrick Rose, Jimmy Butler Cold War going on, that where everyone thought you were Team Jimmy and I was Team Derrick. I was always like, I'm not Team anybody. I'm a journalist, But
But I was Team Jimmy. I didn't like what I was. I had Jimmy jerseys on underneath. I was like,
yeah. But anyway, I agree. If we'd met early in our careers, I've told you this story before, like Roman Bedrowski, who actually is a great friend of mine, a long time sometimes Bulls beat guy from the Tim Floyd era. He and I used to get like mad at when someone had a better quote than we did. Not break news, better quote than we did. Like, how did you get that quote, man? It was, but then we go out, drinking until 2 a.m. and shooting pool together. So.
Right. So now, out of the newspaper thing into the TV thing, what was your approach of? Did you say, hey, this is how I'm going to handle it? Or did you just go into it and say, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just going to figure it out as I go along?
The latter. And I would say, okay, so I would say I'm 6 years into this now. What helped me my first year at NBC, not only were the great people that I worked with, but also I still wrote then. So I still hung my hat on my writing output. And I figured the TV was like an added bonus. But I'll be honest, I talked about those two emotional components of me leaving the Tribune. A big attraction to go on NBC was like, okay, I left in 2019, so I was 52 at the time. It's like, what 52-year-olds get a chance to push themselves out of their comfort zone and try a whole new medium? It was insane that was someone who was going to give me this opportunity. And I still maintain we joke about it. I mean, I do feel like I've gotten competent as a TV professional, but I do still think, I joke like I'm a newspaper guy on TV. But I will say, my first year at NBC to now, I have noticed a huge jump, because that first year I don't think I was very good on TV. And what I was really bad about, if I'm on the pregame show and Kendall Gill or Will Perdue or Jason Goff are asking me a question, I can look into a little box and treat it like radio and answer that all day long. If I need to do a walk-off interview with a player or coach, I can do that in my sleep. When I have to create my own content and talk into a camera, I was really bad at that my first year. And I give NBC credit for sticking with me. And I do feel I've significantly improved on that regard, because I just feel like I'm comfortable and I have information and I have relationships. So I just lean on those. But to answer your question, I mean, I had no training for this. I've never gone to broadcasting school. I just kind of figured it out as I went along.
Don't you kind of feel like you can look at TV guys and go, what you do isn't that hard? It's really not that hard.
What I can say,
it's not that hard.
What I can say is I feel like two things to that. What I can say is I look at TV guys and say, I'm never wearing makeup. That's one thing I can say. And I can say that I can look at TV guys and say, I feel like I can do that, but I'm not sure all TV people could be write for a newspaper.
On deadline.
Got
to add that in, because that's still kind of part of the business.
Wait, what's that? Can you explain that deadline thing to me? I don't know.
So this thing called deadline is, I've got 10 minutes to write this story. Otherwise, the newspaper loses a lot of money for every minute I'm late. That's deadline.
All right. Thanks for the refresher. I appreciate it.
I think there's a lot of people that need to learn that. The one moment that stands out. When did you find out that? And I don't remember how it was that you had to do play-by-play. The night you had to fill in and do play-by-play. Someone got sick.
So that's an incredible story. Some people will know it. Some people may not. So that was back in the early days of COVID and the throes of COVID. It was New Year's Eve 2021. So we were kind of coming out of that. We'd been out of the first wave, and I think we were in the Omicron wave, and it was mandatory masking, except for broadcasters. I was sitting in the media seats, and Adam
in Indy, right? Was it
in Indy? It's a DeMar game winner, the New Year's Eve DeMar game winner.
Yeah, that's right.
And Adam did a false positive, but obviously they didn't know it was a false positive, right? Because broadcasters got tested right before they went on the air. And our producer, our awesome longtime producer, Mark Brady,
he's awesome.
comes on in our ears. Oh, and by the way, Robbie Hummel's already subbing for Stacey King, who has COVID. And Robbie Hummel has never done an NBA game before. He's about to set to work with Adam Amin. Adam Amin pops a positive. We don't know it's false at the time. Brady comes on as a sideline guy. I got Brady in my ear, and he goes, "Yeah, Robbie, we've got a little bit of a situation here. Adam Amin just tested positive for COVID. We're going to need you to do color and play-by-play." And I hit my mic button and go, "I'll do play-by-play." I don't know what came over. This is 3 minutes to broadcast. 3 minutes to broadcast. I don't know what came over me. I've never done.
Did Hummel want to do it, or he didn't want anything to do with it?
No, when I said that immediately, and by the way, those were the first words I had ever spoken to Robbie Hummel, and we're not sitting together. And right when I said that, he goes, "Oh, thank goodness," because he was like, he was gripping it tight already by because he was doing NBA play-by-play for the first time, and he's ridiculously phenomenal.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Brady starts counting us down. I didn't have time to be nervous. I just dove in, and I still don't know why I said that. I just like, I'm a team player. I'm going to take this off Robbie's plate. And I've told this story before, but this was awesome. Like Brady's counting us down, and the last thing Robbie said is it Casey or KC? He didn't even know my name.
What was the difference?
Well, it's CASEY or KC, like you emphasize KC.
Oh, okay.
He didn't know he didn't know my name. And we weren't sitting together. All broadcasters sit together. I was in the writer section. He was in the broadcaster section. So it was pretty bumpy, but it was a thrill a minute. And
were they coaching you up while the game was going on? Like,
this is where you know Mark Brady is as good as at his job as what he does. He did not say boo to me other than encouraging me on commercial breaks, saying you're doing a great job. And he told me later he did that because he didn't want to. He knew it was a Herculean task I was trying to undertake, and he didn't want to mess me up. In retrospect, and I've said this before, I did a radio call on TV because I have no experience. I over-described things. I talked too much. He could have gotten in my ear on a commercial break and said, slow down. In retrospect, I'm glad he didn't, because it says who he is. And then I would have been thinking too much. Yeah. And I actually did start to slow down just out of natural recognition. And then Adam's test came back false positive, and he came back late second quarter. And I will never remember my sign off. I said, Bulls, whatever, Pacers, whatever. We'll be good news, viewers. Adam Amin will be back after this commercial break. So it was definitely a thrill, though. I got to admit, it was pretty fun.
I remember I texted you after. I was like, dude, that's so awesome. I don't even care because I didn't know the story of how it went down or whatever. I was just like, that's awesome that you just freaking just did that, because that play-by-play that's a different animal.
Well, the one thing I did do well is like the Pacers had like 6 guys on the COVID list, and they'd signed all these 10-day guys, like G League guys, and I got every name right. I just knew them,
Right.
And I also had no game notes in front of me because I'm sitting in the writers section, and I still got all their names right. And then Robbie made it really easy, and I started throwing up lobs to Robbie, like, hey, you were in training camp with Zach LaVine, what was that experience like? And I just let him tell stories, and he's so talented. Oh my God.
Right.
So it was a thrill. It was a thrill, man.
What's it like being with Stacey and Adam? Because I had Adam on about a month ago, and to me, I don't think the city of Chicago understands the gem that they have with this dude, of how good he is. Like, I always tell him, his football, Bulls great, but him doing a football game, I like get excited. I search it out. I'm like, all right, what game's Adam doing this week?
It's amazing you say that. It's almost like you read one of my texts. Just recently, I put in our group text. Every once in a while, I pinch. Oh, it was after the Lakers because that got a lot of national attention.
Yeah.
I said every once in a while, I pinch myself and say to myself, Adam Amin is our regular broadcaster. I mean, that dude is like ridiculous. And I agree with you. As great as he is on the Bulls, because he is great, I think he's even better at national stuff just because he's got such a voice for football. I love his work with your guy, Brzezinski, on MLB playoffs. This is all stuff I say to his face and Brady's. But, yeah, he's our freaking broadcaster. He is so good. And then, Stacey I go back with forever, and fans love him. And, he sees the game really well. Catchphrases, I've heard them a lot, but they're fun for a lot of people. But, yeah, it's just an incredible team. And those two guys obviously have a lot of fun together and get along. And, this year with me not writing for the new website and just doing all TV and video stuff, they've really used me a lot more. And the way Adam has welcomed me in and just given me confidence, that stuff goes a long way because, he is such a good teammate. He really is.
Yeah. There's been a handful of games where they've had you, there have been mostly obviously road games, where they've had you come in the studio. Do you like doing that? Is that different to kind of take that perspective where you can do a pregame, sit back, observe, and then jump in and do post?
You mean the games where I leave you alone on the road?
The games where I'm sad and lonely on the road? Yes, those games.
where you're
contemplating my life? Yes.
I have actually really, really enjoyed that. I give that credit to a lot of people, but Rick Jaffe, one of our main news people on CHSN, and Naomi Gray, who produces our pre and post game shows, have welcomed me in there. And I made it clear, like, as long as Jason and Kendall are good with it, because it's their show, and they've been really welcoming and great. I go back with Kendall Gill to high school. We played against each other, Evanston versus Rich Central, and I covered him 1 year on the Bulls, and he's just solid the earth guy. And then Jason and I obviously went to the same high school, total pro. So they've welcomed me in. And to your point, I've loved that. I did not think I would like it as much as I have. It's really, to me, kind of fun and easy to like just sit there and watch a basketball game and then commentate on it like in a studio setting, because you have more time and you can take notes while the game's going on and follow trends and things like that. So I've really enjoyed that, and I will be there this Sunday while you're depressed and alone in Charlotte.
I'll be depressed and alone in Charlotte. Yep, all by myself. You, how tough is it for you? I mean, and just talking to guys like Will Perdue and guys that, Wennington, guys that were there, part of that dynasty, and you were on coverage back then for the Tribune. So you were around it. How tough is it as a writer? Because we've covered championships, and it's a lot of work, but at the same time, it's as rewarding as it comes because the team shines and your work shines. So it's kind of, it's kind of nice. How tough has it been for you to have covered that, maybe one of the best dynasties in Chicago sports history, and since then, just to kind of see just the, there was the Derrick Rose flash of that team, and with Tibbs and all those guys that had promised but never delivered. But there's been a lot more down than ups. Has that been tough for you? Is that part of the thing that kind of wore you down a little bit, or do you just kind of accept it and, hell, I'm not the owner of the team, so, whatever product is out there is out there?
No, it hasn't worn on me at all. In fact, I find that I feel like your responsibility as a beat writer or broadcaster or whatever is to bring, 100% dedication and diligence to the beat, regardless of how the team performs. And as you know, quite frankly, sometimes bad teams can be more entertaining or produce more coppier stories, especially like coming out of the dynasty. That was obviously back when I was a lot younger and had a lot more energy and digging for, dirt. And there was plenty of it in those Tim Floyd years. So those seasons were incredibly memorable. I think this is like my third or fourth rebuild I'm on, or whatever they're doing now. So, I mean, but I feel like it's your job to bring the energy, and fans are still fans, and your job is to be there providing content for the fans. So I think that didn't wear on me at all. And I find it like that's a time when you got to like step it up and still bring professionalism and work ethic to the beat.
Where do you see this team right now? In your eyes?
I mean, it's like,
besides 10th, Hopefully ninth after tonight, but yeah.
I will say, you may disagree with this. I will say some of the things Arturas talked about in the preseason have come to fruition, except the home record. He did bring that up several times. But, I think there's been some player development this year. They got their 2025 pick back. He talked about wanting to do that. What else? Oh, style of play. They've been organizationally very consistent on that, and they really have flipped that offensive profile. It's been
I don't think Billy's getting enough credit for that. That's not easy to do.
I agree with that.
That's not easy just to say, I've got this team that's played a certain way, whether it's just because of DeMar or just whatever, and Vooch isn't the fastest guy, but screw it, we're playing this way, and Vooch is just going to have to get in condition, and if he's the last guy down, then we'll hit him trailing for an outside three. I mean, that's not easy to do, and to do it successfully like they have.
Billy's pushed a lot of really good buttons this year. I mean, even I was asking about the zone defense he's been sprinkling in recently. We've both asked him about the rotation. He's hit the right buttons there. Some guys in, some guys out.
Right.
And really, quite frankly, everyone has produced. I mean, not like they're a great team, but like Jalen Smith, good minutes. Taylor Horton-Tucker out of the rotation, drops 27 last night. I mean, they have a pretty deep team. It's been an entertaining team to watch. But back to your overall question, what I have been saying to people that I talked to around the league just over like the last 2 weeks is like they make all these changes. And obviously it's not a finished product. You got to see where this goes and see what ceiling Modest reaches. But they make all these changes and decide to get out of the middle and trade DeMar, Caruso, and Zach. And they're right where they were last year. That's the part that's like, what are they doing?
Right. It's funny because we both talk to people around the league, and I will say, at least until a couple of weeks ago, the overlying opinion is, what the hell are the Bulls doing? I mean, what lane are they picking? Because it seems like they're trying to walk a fine line. It's hard to be a developmental team, but still be a team that's going for the playoffs. It's just hard to do in any sport, baseball, football, especially the NBA. My concern with this team is there could be a trade this offseason. There could be some small movement, but it's basically going to be the core coming back. And you have to hope that what you've seen isn't Fugazi, isn't fool's gold, isn't a mirage, that Kobe, Josh are going to continue to have high ceilings and reach those ceilings, and Modest has to take a huge jump. Then whatever pick you get has to also have some kind of impact. And even if you do all that, you still have to be concerned because Philadelphia is going to be a lot better next year.
Right.
Toronto is going to be a lot better next year. I've never been sold on Atlanta. I think it's a gutless team. But, I mean, just the idea of, we're on the rise. Well, you are, and you could still finish 9 or 10 again next year because of what's behind you. And whoever gets Cooper Flagg could be on the rise. I mean, if Brooklyn gets him or something, it'd probably take an extra year. But so that's my concern, is we really won't see or get a feel of what this thing is, to me, until the 26-27 season. Once all the contracts come off, then what can you do? Because that will be the biggest test for Arturas, I think.
Very fair. And obviously, if any changes are made this offseason, they're going to come via the trade market. And we were talking as a beat the other day in the Denver media room before shoot-around about how we counted, adding a draft pick, we counted 14 guaranteed contracts next year, assuming Giddey's re-signed and Carter picks up his player option, both of which I think will happen. So,
and that was also Trey Jones out the door.
Right. So they're at 14 guaranteed contracts. So unless the only way they're making changes this offseason is via the trade market, the way I see it. So to your point, I agree. 26-27 is we're going to see, how this reiteration is. Is it going to take off, or is it going to stay stuck in the middle? Like, where's Modest at that point? Are Giddey and Kobe those guys? Because you wrote a nice column in the Sun-Times the other day, which we've talked about in the beat room. About, you got to pencil like 65-70 million for those two, and neither of them have an all-star game to their name to this point. Now, could there be in their future? Maybe. We'll see. But you're right. It's going to be a lot of judging as we move forward.
Last thing about the Bulls, because obviously we talk about them enough, but the last thing, getting back to Billy, the one, people rip on Billy, there's Billy critics, which I think Billy is at the very top of that second tier. And to me, that first tier is only 3 or 4 coaches.
Right.
Those are the, maybe 5, but I think Billy's right there. I don't think Bulls fans appreciate him enough, but that's for another day. The one thing I'll say, it'll be interesting to see if we are not seeing, because to me, I kind of feel like we're getting close to a ceiling with Kobe, but maybe we're not. And if we're not, if the defense and the playmaking continue to improve, I mean, maybe all of a sudden there's your all-star. Giddey, interesting, because at the beginning of the year, they had to be thinking this is an awful trade. This guy's unplayable when it matters. And what we saw at Oklahoma City is still the problem. For him to flip the switch has been great. But again, March basketball always scares me to evaluate guys. To me, the guy Modest has to be the real deal. Because if he's the real deal, now you're looking at something completely different.
Although I would say, I mean, I'm curious to see where Kobe and Josh go. I think what Josh is showing is legit because it's been a complete change stylistically with the stop shooting the floater and being more aggressive at both ends and more physical at both ends.
Yeah.
And then the thing about Kobe, and you know this, it's like every time we count that dude out or say this is his limit or this is his ceiling, he comes back at you with like, no, I got this, dude. That's what I respect about that guy. And he always looks inward, always takes responsibility and accountability. I've said this multiple times of late. He's the heart and soul of the team to me. So we'll see. But you're right. There's a lot of question marks still for sure.
Are you ready for the interrogation room?
No, because I said I was going to flip the switch.
No,
no.
I've got good ones about rock and roll and stuff.
I'll be brief. You were complimenting me. I want to flip people's perception of you on their heads and just briefly say, those of you who think you know Joe Cowley do not know the real Joe Cowley. I will say, for all the years I've been in this business, he is as good of a beat teammate as there can be. To use some caveman terminology that he would appreciate, he's a foxhole guy. He leaves no beat person behind. He's actually a man of the people, even though he tries to hide that and has jokes about that. So he is a troll on Twitter. We cannot talk politics, but he is he's an evolving, maturing person, and he's a family guy. This is why he and I bond more than anything else. We are travel buddies. He's a family guy. He's all about family. So those of you who think Joe Cowley is this meathead caveman troll, well, maybe sometimes. But that's not the real Joe Cowley. And I've actually really, as you know, value our friendship, and we are wonderful beat partners. And I just want people to realize that there's a good person there because not everyone knows that.
I appreciate it. It's funny because we always tell the Bulls TV, obviously every NBA team has a content team, Bulls TV. We always tell them, yeah, you guys should come travel with us. I mean, if people saw, like, we have this thing, if one of us gets a better room than the other, we go and check out the room and then get bitter about it and be like, I should ask for this room. Why didn't I ask for this room? We just have so many, so many things on the road we do. I mean, it's to the point where we just make noises. I don't even do sense. You'll say something else, go,
Everyone on the beat knows we're like, because the one thing I forgot to say in that little compliment fest was we are incredibly different people, but
but strangely similar in some important ways.
Yeah, like the family aspect.
Yes,
But yeah, people joke that we're like an old married couple on the road.
Yeah.
Everyone knows I'm the organized one in that regard. So.
Yeah, I told you, Miami, I totally got lost on what time it was, the game. You know how many times I've been like, yeah, what time you want to meet? 4:30? And you're like, yeah, it's a 7:30 game. I'm like, it is? I don't even look. Or what's the internet? I don't know. They sent you an email, Joe. I didn't look. So,
all right, interrogation room. Let's go.
All right, here we go. For those that don't know, Casey is a very good guitar player.
No, I'm not.
Very good's fair. I'm not going to say great. I'm going to say very good. Very good. Better guitarist in your mind? Big debate. Jimi Hendrix or Jimmy Page?
Oh, that's a good one. I actually am not a huge fan of either, just personal style. But I mean, obviously, I respect both their work. But I'm going to go Jimmy Page.
Okay. The last great concert you went to, if people don't know, KCC's a bunch of different shows / concerts.
I went to a folk singer that nobody's ever heard of named David Francie at a church in Hinsdale.
Oh, Dave. Yeah, I know him. I don't. What do you think you've seen more of in the last 10 years? Better Bulls games or better concerts?
Oh, come on, man. Not even close. 10 years, let's see. That'd be 2015. So, and Derek, the conference finals and MVP was over. Yeah, concerts, not even close.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beatles, overrated?
No.
No, I always tell my father-in-law they're overrated. He gets very angry about it.
As do I right now. So all those things I said, take them back. Take those things back.
Best Bulls player that you covered. This is first from a talent standpoint, not named Michael, Scotty, or Derek.
Oh, wow. From a talent standpoint. Man. I mean, Powell would be in that conversation, even though he's only there 2 years. That dude was so good. Yeah. Jimmy would be in that conversation.
DeMar's got to be in the conversation.
DeMar's got to be in that conversation. You know him as that guy, so Zach would be in that
guy. Joakim, fourth in MVP voting.
Yeah, but you said talented, like Joakim.
Talented, yeah. He was a motor guy. Yeah.
He was very skilled. He was way more.
Oh yeah.
It's supposed to be fast. I'm beating around the bush. I might go DeMar.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, he's all NBA.
Which player have you gotten along with the most?
I mean, I've gotten along with a lot of players, but
I know
maybe from my OG, like early when I was closer to the same age and the bond we still have, I'd say Jamal Crawford.
I was going to say Jamal. All right, people that don't know, KC does not see a lot of movies, especially man movies that I think you have to see. I'm going to name a movie. You tell me if you've seen it or not. Rocky 1.
Yes.
Rocky 2.
Yes.
Rocky 3. That's
Which one is
Mr.
that?
T. Mr. T. Clubber Lang.
No.
Oh my God. Probably the best one. Thunder Lips, Hulk Hogan. Rocky 4, where he defends our country and goes to Moscow and beats Drago.
No.
Oh my. All right, so 1 and 2. All right. Godfathers, the Godfather trilogy.
No.
Scarface.
No.
Raging Bull.
No.
Oh my gosh. Armageddon.
No.
They drill on an asteroid to save the planet. No? Okay. Tombstone.
No.
Gladiator 1.
No.
Any of the Rambos.
No.
Just any of them.
No.
First Blood, nothing. Goodfellas.
No.
With Pesci.
No.
All right. Favorite city to travel to?
Now you're going to run down all the literature that I've read, right?
No, that's you. People that don't know, when we get on an airplane, Casey.
No, let me take this.
All right, go ahead.
I pull out a library book of some
or a newspaper.
Or a magazine. I read the New Yorker a lot. Or I read some, deep literature library book. And Joe's killing things on his video games.
You can't just say killing things.
You're killing things.
I play a game of World Conquest.
You're killing things.
Attack or negotiate. There's no negotiations. There's attack.
Very on brand.
I'll shake hands and pretend I'm going to negotiate, and then I'll attack anyway after we have a peace treaty.
We're very on brand on flights. Anyway. All right.
Favorite city to travel to?
There's a lot of them, but I always say San Francisco.
Okay. Highest scoring game when you played at Beloit. People don't know you played Division III, Beloit.
Not high. I was a glue guy. I think 15, 17.
Wow, that's nice. Last one. There's a bus. It's got your TV family in it. You love your new TV family. There's another bus. It's got your writer family in it. Me, Sully, all your writer family. They're both going over a cliff. You can only save one. Are you a TV guy or are you a writer guy? So you missed this the other night. I don't remember what game it was. I was ragging, or actually Trey Jones and it was Houston. We were ragging on Chicago basketball because on the podcast, he said Minnesota basketball the last 10 years has been better. And I agreed with him. We named the players. And it was funny because Modest, all of a sudden, Dalen goes, what about Modest? He's from Chicago. You didn't say him. And out of nowhere, Vooch, you know how Vooch has just got like Vooch, people don't understand how funny Vooch is. Vooch goes, yeah, Modest, you got to choose. Are you Chicago or are you a Euro? And Modest is like, I don't know. He goes, you got to choose. Anybody never said. So I thought that was funny. So now you got to choose. Your TV family? Is this your pass? Are you passing on this one?
Yeah, it's my pass. If I had to choose, I'd probably let the writers die because the industry is going to hell. I'm just kidding.
I don't blame you. Dude,
I'd save you and Sully though, and a few others.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for doing this. You know how I feel about you.
Back at you.
I have a real brother, and you're my other brother. So love you. Thanks for doing this, and I will see you. Cleveland.
Yeah.
Oh,
sounds good.
Oh, there it is.
Beautiful. See, I won him over. Oh, there we go. That's where you back it up. Yeah, I won him over though.
Yeah, that was good. That was my favorite TV moment of the year. Screw that giddy Lakers prayer that he threw up, a lucky ass shot from down under.
Thanks for having me on, Joe. You're the best, man. Thank you.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon. All right. My guy, Casey Johnson. Love that dude. The rant. Kind of touched on it a little bit. There's a lot of excitement about this team the last couple of weeks. Big West Coast trip, 4-2. And it reminded me of how easily this fan base gets the Kool-Aid vat put in front of them and just puts their faces in and starts slurping. All this great stuff. Kobe, back-to-back player of the week, now player of the month. Modest, 31 points, then a 28-point game. He's the next. He's the best rookie in the class. Arturas did it. All this stuff coming, whether it's social media or even last week when I had that maniac Fred on. All these good feelings. And at the end of the day, people seem to forget, and I like the fact that Billy brought this up yesterday, they're still number 9/number 10 in the East. As Billy put it, we're at the bottom of the East. And so all these good feelings, all these things going on, and I still think it's unbelievable how the sheep flock so easily when they see a shiny dime roll by or a bright light or a half-court shot from the Australian Josh Giddey. Just a reminder, this team is very, very, very mediocre still. Most of the cast is coming back next year. So the idea that this is all of a sudden some kind of big springboard to something great, till you get that dude, which I say many times in this podcast, you're still just another team middling around in the middle of the East. Let's go to the list. We're just going to tailgate off of what I was just saying. Right now, there's some teams that the Bulls, doesn't matter what happens this offseason, are not better than. Let's get that out there. We're not even going to put these in order. Cavs, Boston, New York, Indy, Detroit, Milwaukee. I would say a healthy Orlando team. Here's where the concern is. Here's 3 teams that you have to look out for because right now they are kind of in the crapper, mostly because of injuries. But here's 3 teams that this offseason don't think the Bulls aren't going to get or stay better than. Number 1, whatever team gets Cooper Flag. If it happens to be Brooklyn, I think Brooklyn could jump the Bulls within 2 years. If it happens to be Charlotte, a little tougher just because of the culture there. If it happens to be the Wizards, I know people rip on the Wizards, but I know what their plan is. And I would say if they're able to execute this plan and get one of the big guys, whether it's AJ in 26, DeMonza, or Cooper Flag this year, or kid going to Kansas in 26, who was MVP of the McDonald's game. If they're able to do that, look out. Then also teams that brought up earlier in the podcast, Toronto with Ingram, healthy, Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett. I mean, they'll be in the same area code as the Bulls and could easily pass them up. And finally, Philadelphia. There's no way Philadelphia is this bad. They're not going to be able to trade Joel Embiid. Paul George, disaster, but even Paul George is a disaster as long as he's healthy is a player. Maxey took another huge jump. People forget McCain was leading the rookie class before he got hurt for the season, and now they're going to have a top pick to add to it, same as Toronto. So So all the Bulls fans out there that are printing playoff tickets for the next couple of years, slow your roll. So Ryan McGuffey, thanks a lot, my guy. Glad you're back. And I'm not scaring interns this week. And, of course, Casey Johnson, thanks for joining this. Cat, love it. Until next week, I got next.